Hi, my name is Andrei from the Dart team, and I'm here to tell you how the Dart project can help you become a better developer, and the tools that are available for Dart developers to make better code. The Dart project is different from other web development because we have a lot of tools included in the SDK that you can get everything, batteries included. Traditional web development is scattered, and you have to find your own package manager, and you have to work with a bunch of different tools that don't really integrate well. But the great thing about Dart is that it's very toolable. You could get started with Dart by going to dartlang.org/tools, where you can download the SDK and the editor, which we'll be using for most of this talk. The editor has all of the tools that you need to write, edit, test, document, analyze, publish, and deploy your applications to the world. Something about me is that people tell me that I'm too timid and I have a problem where people don't take me seriously on the internet. So I want to build a Dart application that can help me be more persuasive on message boards, comment threads. So let's go make something that will help. Let's make an argument clinic app that helps you become a better speaker. So we're going to build this in several parts. We're going to make a text enhancer that takes your text and turns it into something better. We'll write the unit test so we know it works. We'll have documentation so that we can use it in the future and others can use our code. And then we'll put it together into a web app and then share it with the world. So let's begin by building the library text enhancer. So this is the Dart editor. It was built as a plugin on top of Eclipse, but it is its own separate editor. And it has many useful features like autocomplete and refactoring that I will show you. So this library takes code and turns it into uppercase. So your comments are more persuasive. But what if we want to change this code later? We have this quiet text.to uppercase, and maybe I want to change how I want to enhance text. So let's refactor this in one step so that we can have it individually. I can highlight the text and right-click, click Extract Method, which pops open a dialog. And here, this will let me extract a method and rename it and have it as a separate method. So let's call this something persuasive. So now you see that we have a new method that was added to the file, and the previous instance of that code was replaced here with the new call to the method. So how do I know if my code is doing what I want, if it's really enhancing my text? Well, we would use a unit test. But where would I get a unit test library? The pub package manager is available from the Dart SDK, and it exists as a service and a tool that you can use to share, use, and distribute packages, which are bunches of Dart code. Pub.dartlang.org is a great place you can go to check out all the different packages that are available. There are packages for everything from servers to database connectors to task runners, which are all worth using. The entry point to any package is a file called pubspec.yaml. And this is a file that describes your application or package, and it also lists the dependencies that your package depends on. So let's take a look at that. The Dart editor has a handy pubspec editor so that you can edit the fields in an easy fashion. Here you see I have the name of the package, the author, the version, and a description. And we're going to add a dependency. So I know that there's a great pub package called unit test, so I'm going to import that by clicking the Add Dependency button. So this will just say that the unit test package is a dependency for your own package. We click pub install from here or from the tools menu to install all the dependencies. So this populates the packages folder with all of the packages that we depend on. So you see that there is this meta package which was included even though it's not one of our dependencies. Transitive dependencies are also included in your own package. So unit test depends on meta, which is added to your own package so that the unit test can function properly. Let's go to one of our tests. So here we have a simple test to check if the shout method does what we think it's going to do. But you see that there are these warnings on the side that the test function is not defined. We need to import the test library into our Dart file so we can use it. And you do that by using the package : import. So this will import the unit test package, which cleared up all the warnings for tests. However, there's another warning here which says that the shout is not defined. Even though we're in the same package, you still need to include all of the Dart file's individual dependencies, in this case, the shoutify file. And you import that the same way as you would any other package. So now you see that the warning went away now, but I forgot a semicolon. And the Dart editor will tell you anytime you forget something like this. It will highlight errors. So it expected to find a semicolon, so we're going to add a semicolon and save. And now this code should work. You can test that the code works by hitting the Run button up here, or using Control-R or Command-R to run it. So let's run it and see what the output is. The unit tests all passed, as you see here, and everything succeeded. Let's see if we can. So what happens if a unit test fails? Let's change this from a little mouse to a little moose. And this is going to fail because we changed how the test runs, but let's see what actually is happening. In the Dart editor, you could set a breakpoint to pause execution of the code by right-clicking in the margin and hitting toggle breakpoint. So now when we hit run, the unit test library has paused, and you could see the stack trace of the current execution, and you see that the loud text is different from what we expect it to be. And so this test will fail. The debugger lets you step into code and step over code, just like a debugger in other IDEs, so that you can examine the code. And it'll give you the values of any of the local and top-level variables. So let's stop debugging and click Resume. And you see that our tests failed, and they printed out all sorts of unhappy messages. And you see the failure up here. Let's take out this breakpoint and move on. So how do we have these unit tests, but how do we know if our code is going to be stable, or if other people try to depend on the Shoutify library, whether they can be assured that the code works? Or for that matter, what happens if one of our dependencies stops working? What if unit test has a breaking change and we need to change things? Well, for this, we have Drone.io, which is a continuous integration service that monitors your GitHub repository or code.google repository or Bitbucket, and whenever it detects a change in your repository or in a repository of one of your dependencies, or if one of your dependencies is changed, then it will rerun all of your tests and then submit to you a a notification of whether it passed or failed. So let's try that. So right now, I have a failing test, and previously I had a passing test. So let's go to commit all the changes I have now, and I'm going to push this repository, and we'll see what happens. I'm switching over to Drone.io. And my push is still happening, but now that it is finished pushing, you see that on Drone.io, the build has already started. We can click into it, and quickly enough, it shows that our build failed. This is also available as a badge that you can embed into a repository or as a dynamic PNG, which I have on the package here. So it used to be passing, but if we refresh, you see that it's failing. So anybody that goes to pub.dartlang.org into your package can see that your latest tests are not passing. So they might not want to use your package. Let's go back and fix that, and we won't worry about pushing it again. So to maintain a good package, you probably want to have good documentation. Documentation is sort of like flossing. It's something that you don't always want to do, but you'll really thank yourself later if you do it. Documentation in Dart looks like this. There are two forms of documentation comments. There is the /** model, which lets you do multi-line comments. And then there's the //, which lets you do single-line comments. Or you can chain a couple of // comments to have a multi-line comment. And once you add documentation, your documentation will look something like this. So it will look like the API documentation for Dart itself, which you can see here. So the api.dartlang.org is a great resource for seeing all of the packaged libraries that come with Dart and seeing how they work. So now that we have documentation and we have unit tests, we might want to publish our app. So it's going to look like it's failing, but we still want to get our new code up on pub. The way that you do this is by using pub itself to publish the app. You can do this in several ways, but one way is to go back to your pub spec, and there's a button next to the pub install button that says publish to Dartlang, or to publish to pub. If you click on this, then a dialog will ask you if you really want to publish this, and I want to really enable people to be heard on the internet in their comments and threads, and really when they have important things to say, so let's publish this. So this is going to go through the process of publishing to pub, and you see that it was uploaded successfully. If we go back to pub, you see that our version has increased. So our latest package is already on pub, and other people can start using it. So now that we are done with that, how about we go back to our web app? So what is our web app going to look like to begin with? So this is what I built before, and right now it doesn't really do anything. Right now you can edit some texts and click a button, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't really make my message any more clear. So let's do that by modifying this code. We can go to the Dart file I have for this application, and you see here that on a click, it updates the value of the text. We want to increase the volume of our message, so we need to use the shout. Here we can just modify the text to be text shout text, which is how our method works. And we already know it works because of the unit tests. However, we don't have this test included. You could try to import it like this. But this isn't going to work because this is a different application and it doesn't know about the Shadowfy library. So we go to the pub spec for this library and we add it as a dependency just like we did with unit test, except now we have our own package that we can depend on. So we run pub install to get everything up and running. And we go back here and we save again, and now everything is working. So now we can deploy this to the web. One tool we have that you have available is Dartium, which is a development browser that has the Dart virtual machine built in. To run it, you right-click on your main Dart or HTML file, and then you say run in Dartium. However, one thing that's great about having the VM included is that you can debug your application right from the Dart editor. So let's toggle a breakpoint right here, just like we did earlier, and right-click Run in Dartium, which will run our new application. So let's see what happens. So let's say I disagree with you, which is lackluster. Click here, and it clearly makes your message makes it pop more. Let me try this again. To get the debugging, I needed to run Dartium from the HTML file, which I did not. And so now I am waiting for the Dartium to load so I could debug it. But as it is not loading, I am going to show you how else you can deploy your Dart applications. One way, there is a common myth that goes a little bit like this, but Dart is not just for Chrome. It runs in all modern web browsers using a compiler called Dart2JS, which converts Dart code into JavaScript code. We have been making a lot of progress and many improvements in reducing the size of the JavaScript code that's generated from Dart code. So if after you minify using Dart2JS and run gzip on your web server, you can reduce the size of your JavaScript code to something really manageable and deploy it everywhere. However, you're not just writing in JavaScript, you have the full complement of Dart tools, and you have the type system, and you have the package manager, and all of this stuff included, which you wouldn't get with JavaScript. So let's see what this looks like in different browsers. So to run in JavaScript, you right-click again on the HTML file, and you click Run as JavaScript. And this will create the JavaScript version of your code. So you see here that when you click on the button, you see that it works. Something else you could do in browsers that support source maps, you can go into the actual Dart file from the developer tools and debug it straight from the browser, from Dart in this case. So here I could set a breakpoint in the developer tools, and now when I click on this button, it actually pauses the execution of the JavaScript app. But I'm still looking at the Dart code. So this makes it very easy to debug your applications in different browsers where there are source maps available. And this is included automatically whenever you compile to Dart2JS. So just to show you that we mean business, here is the same application in Firefox. Works as you would imagine. And here it is in Internet Explorer. And I forgot to refresh. And here it works perfectly. So let's go back and see what else we could do. So I've shown you how to build, test, deploy, and document this package. But maybe you're not too interested in working in the Dart editor, or maybe you want to SSH into a machine where you're more comfortable working, or maybe you have a different text editor. Well, I'm happy to say that all of the tools that I've shown you, Dart2JS, the documentation generator, pub, are all available on the command line. So here I could do pub install, and if I was in the right directory, it would have worked. I do pub install, and it does the same thing. It resolves all dependencies and installs them. You can do the same thing with Dart2JS, the Dart documentation tool. All of this can run from the command line. But we also have support for a full complement of text editors and IDEs like Eclipse and WebStorm, which have really great integration. But I want to show you something that we have fairly recently, is our Sublime integration. So you can install the Dart plugin for Sublime using the package control plugin. And it's as simple as doing package control install package and then Dart. And fairly quickly, your package will be installed. And then you could set syntax to Dart, and then your Dart code will be syntax highlighted. From here, you can also do pub install. You can also run the analyzer, which will tell you about any errors you have in your code. For example, if I remove the semicolon and I run the analyzer, then it will tell me that there is a missing semicolon right here in Sublime. So you can keep your productivity high with the editor that you're used to. There's way more tools than I could possibly go into in this short amount of time, but here are a couple of libraries that are available in pub. There's really excellent task runners. The Web UI library is great for building modern user interfaces with a model view whatever model. There is a great build pack for Heroku. So if you have a server-side application, you could push it to Heroku in one step and have your application live. And there's way more, and more is coming out all the time. So if we go back to the argument clinic and see if we accomplished everything we wanted to, we saw that we were able to be more persuasive on the internet, and we made it possible for other people to use our application by sharing it as a web app and as a package on pub. So perhaps if somebody wants to mash up a text enhancer with some social network, they could do so using the APIs provided. And I think I've made the world a little better by making your comments more persuasive. Thank you for listening to this talk. If you want to find out more about Dart, you can go to dartlang.org. There we have a full complement of videos, articles, documentation, tutorials, mailing lists. You can also catch us on the Google Plus community, Dartisans. And most of all, I want you to go out and be productive and give it what for. Thanks.